Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Off the Cuff. Switching it up a little bit this time, we're going to do the face recording stuff. So if I seem weird and like bouncing around, that's why. I am going to do my best in post because right now I look like a freaking Oompa Loompa and I'm not a huge fan of that. So when I go back to edit this, hopefully I can fix that. Just want to do something a little different than just the plain black background and the logo. So just give you something else to look at. Not that there's anything pretty to look at here. So we're gonna do off the cuff with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles today, and yeah, I'm gonna have the Rotten Tomato reviews up because we have the power of editing, and yeah, we'll go from there. So let's pull up some Rotten Tomatoes. Today should be a fun one because oh my gosh. It is a 21% from the critics and a 50% from the audience. So, we'll see how this goes. All right. Starting off with the critics, as per usual. This one from JD Duran from In Session Film. This version of TMNT doesn't quite have the heart or development that keeps you as engaged or entertained throughout. It does some parts well, but mostly it falls flat. Again, so going back to the three things I had in the review for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were the combat, having good combat, or fun combat at least, it being corny or cheesy, and then the Megan Fox being Megan Fox. So the score, because they give a letter grade, the score for this one is a D plus. I think the heart is there. You definitely have to look for it. It's in the scenes where they're in the hashish and the where they're doing like it's the pizza scene in the near the beginning of the movie. It's in stuff like the when Raphael basically figures out that he loves his family and he's always had a hard time communicating that. Like this movie does have heart, and yeah, you have to look past kind of the stupid stuff because there's, again in the let's say nice things. I'm only trying to talk positive in those movies or in those videos, but that's not to say there's not stupid stuff in there because there is. I do think I do think it has a little bit more heart. And honestly, this little blurb of the review makes it sound like I wouldn't score it a D plus with this review. I would give it a C. Me personally, for what I was expecting, I'd probably give the movie like a B. You know, if we're putting a letter grade to it. This next one from Benjamin Harguindi. Harguindi. Sorry if I mispronounced that. The way the turtles relate to their past, their father, and the villain of the movie in such an improbable way that it seems forced, even for a comic. And then the full reviews in Spanish, it's 3 out of 10. Yeah, I understand that. Everything in this version of the story, everything is so connected. So like the turtles and Splinter were April's pets, basically, that William Fitchner's character and April's dad were experimenting with to make the mutagen. So it all comes off as a little bit too convenient. But that being said, for for trying to get from A to B, I think it does an okay job. Is it the best it could have been? No, but it did fine. I think for what it was trying to be. Let's see, Shadow and Act staff. I can't think of a recent blockbuster that's been raked across the coals as much as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it doesn't give a score. I think what's interesting about this review, again, I haven't looked at these ahead of time, but I think what's interesting about this review in particular is that it doesn't say whether it deserved to be raked across the coals or not. It just says that it has been, and I don't think it deserves it. And I think comics fans and animation fans in general are an interesting bunch to critique when they critique because if it doesn't look and sound exactly like the one they grew up with, then it's bad. It's kind of like I see it as kind of like classical music. If you hear a classical piece for the first time, it has to have it has a certain meter and it has a certain flow and rhythm and stuff. And if you get a different version that goes a little faster, a little slower, it sounds different, even though it's not necessarily bad or wrong, but it sounds wrong to the person who is used to hearing that classical piece for the first time over here because that's what they know. So again, with something like this, I think you need to be a little bit more open minded that it has a certain target audience. That's what I was talking about in the review too. With I didn't particularly like the shredder design in this movie. I think it's a crazy over the top. I prefer a more simple design. Even the 2003, because that's the one I grew up with, was the 2003 animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But the 80s one is perfectly acceptable because it's a nice simple concept. It gets the point across. This one from Brian Eggert from Deep Focus Review. Indeed, motion capture and a push towards photoreal animation result in rather gross heroes with nostrils, particularly in the case of Splinter, whose slimy quality incites some blatant bubonic anxiety. Point 0.5 out of 4. Um, yeah, again, the you have to get used to you. I don't know how to word this. It's one of those things where it's not going to look the same as what you expect from earlier adaptations, especially when you're going from animation to quote unquote live action. It's gonna go in a different direction. Because the only other way you do it is you do something like the style of like Space Jam, where you have the 2D, almost like a 2.5D version of the animation in the movie, and that looks weird in its own right. You can get past it. Like obviously Space Jam is a cult classic, and you can get past it, but it's a tough one to sell. So going for more of the photorealistic is usually the easier way to go in that regard as far as trying to sell it. Yeah, if I had to say, I would say Splinter does look the worst of the animated one of the animated characters, but at the same time, he still looks fine. He looks fine. He gets the job done. This one from Richard Krause. Perhaps I'm overthinking a movie about Ninja Turtles, but the film wants you to underthink, and that's the problem. 1 out of 5. Yeah, you're overthinking it, 100%. And you have to understand it's a Nickelodeon produced movie via Paramount. It's a kids movie, so you got to think of it in that respect. You're aiming at 8 to 13-year-olds, and even if you think about it in the light of the target audience in that regard, you're thinking a Nickelodeon crowd. I think this does fine. It's not this high art. It's not anything. It's fine. I think it gets the job done. Okay, this one from Mike Massey with Gone with the Twins. The ninjutsu, pizza cravings, and high tech accoutrements might not be so easy to digest if the imagery wasn't so familiar. Not, and it's a 5 out of 10. I'm not sure entirely what he's referring to at the end there. If he's referring to like the Transformers movies that Paramount made, because I mean, it's produced by Michael Bay, so it's going to have a very similar feel to the Michael Bay Transformer movies, even if he didn't direct this one. So yeah, I can understand that. But again, I think for what it is, it's still fine. Okay, this one from Richard Propst from the Independent Critic. Fundamentally moronic, badly lit, horridly choreographed, and badly focused film. 1 out of 4. Yes, fundamentally moronic. I'll grant you that the story is not ideal. It again, like I was talking about before, it has to find a convenient way to make the story come together in because the movie's only an hour and 40 minutes, so you're not going to go deep diving into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle lore. So they had to find a convenient way to get this backstory in there. Badly lit. That's one of those things where I think you're talking about like the first half of the movie where they're trying to hide the turtles and the reveal is going to be like a bigger reveal. And I can understand that, but it's one of those cases where if you start with the turtles being revealed in daylight, it looks even worse. So basically you start them in the dark to build the suspense of them, and then as you get to near the end of the movie, you can light them up. Um, so it doesn't look as bad. It's the same problem with like Jaws, right? And yeah, it sounds stupid. It sounds stupid to compare this to Jaws, but think about it. So you don't see the shark in its full glory until the end of the movie, and by that point you're bought in. And let's be honest, the shark doesn't look super ideal at the end of the movie. Like it gets the job done clearly, but it's one of those things where if you started it like that, it would look way worse. And you're like, oh, this is the thing we have to deal with. That's my 2 cents on that one. Oh, and as far as the horridly choreographed, I kind of disagree with that. I think the choreography is pretty good, actually, for the fight scenes. Um, Brent McKnight, the last thing, says, "Why is April O'Neil the main character in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie?" Score of C minus. Because you have to have a vehicle by which the audience gets to the turtles. So like April's is kind of the stand-in for the audience essentially. Let's do a couple more here. Charlie Jane Anders from IO9. I feel like there was an opportunity to make something entertaining, and it was squandered by a movie that's simultaneously trying too hard and not trying hard enough. Yeah, I mean that's a fair review. It could have been better if it was a little bit tighter, if they hadn't focused so much on April, on like everyone around April thinking she's crazy. There's about probably 15 minutes of runtime that you could have either edited it out to make it a little bit of a tighter movie or use that time a little bit better. Because her talking to Whoopi Goldberg ended up being, useless and everything. So yeah, I can appreciate that. And this is the last critic one from Peter Hartlub. The whole TMNT movie is overinflated, like watching an otherwise tolerable music video stretched out for 101 minutes. 1 out of 4. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's overinflated. I think it's I think it's fine. I understand what he's saying though. It seems like there's a lot of like music overlay and stuff like that, especially with the music choices that they used for the score of the movie. But overall, I think it's fine. An hour and 40 minutes. I think it's a fine runtime. That's not really the problem. All right, so let's move over to the audience reviews. Oop, jeez, Rotten Tomatoes mad at me. The Splatoon fan, half star. Why the hell do they look like that? Because that is the interpretation of the director. I don't know what to tell you. It's just the version of the movie. Jalen C, 2 star. This movie was never going to work. Massive 6 foot turtles who look like they're on steroids kind of defeats the fact that it's Ninja Turtles, and it's way better being animated. That's totally fair. I mean, you are a lot easier to suspend your disbelief in the animation form, and I get it, especially because I think in the '80s version of the show, um, they're animated to be around like 4.5 feet tall, more or less. They're shorter. I'm pretty sure they're shorter than April in the TV show. Um, so it's a little bit harder to swallow in that regard. Chuck M, 1 star. Where's the nostalgia? This movie has a soulless Hollywood flopbuster. I'd rather watch Corey Feldman reprise his role as Donatello in the original costume that looks like nightmare fuel. I think there is nostalgia in this movie, though. I think the scene in the hashish where they're all like balancing on stuff and like concentrating when Splinter's trying to figure out, they're basically in there trying to figure out why, what did you do on the surface? And it's the whole scene with all of the product placement with like the Pizza Hut pizza and everything. I think there is nostalgia in it. You definitely have to look for it, but it is there. All right, half star. This adaptation to the Turtles, whether it's their look, their origins, or the story, it all falls flat. It's all falls flat. A definite skip, and it never existed. I mean, you could definitely feel that way. I think you just look at it as its own adaptation, right? It's its own version, and not everyone likes even the modern. Look at like the 28. I think I still hear people complain about like the 2018 animated TV show and how gross and ugly they're looking. Like everyone is going to complain about anything, especially when it comes to animation. If it's not their style, then people just instantly don't like it. Miles F gives it 3 stars. Could be better. Funny though. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, could it have been better? Sure. Given for what they were trying to go for, it's not bad. I wouldn't give it again. The critics gave it 21, and the critics are always going to be more critical because that's their job. And the audience was 50, which I think is a fair score, to be perfectly honest. Okay, here's one 5 star from Maple. I know most people hate these movies, but I grew up on them, and yes, they do absolutely suck, but I truly love them with all my heart. I hope you can all find it in your hearts to enjoy them as much as I always will. P.S. They truly suck. Like they would get a 1, maybe 2 out of 10 if nostalgia didn't have a violent chokehold on me. I appreciate the honesty of it. Um, I think if I was giving them it nostalgia aside, because that definitely plays a part in this. Nostalgia aside, if I was just looking at this super objectively, yeah, I might give this movie like a 2 or a 3. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to just look for the positives and you're looking for good stuff, you're going to find good stuff. And it does have plenty of nostalgia and it does have plenty of heart in it. Again, you have to go looking for it and you have to like ignore some of like the origin story stuff is a little hard to swallow and that sort of thing. But overall, I think it's fine. Okay, Nick, half star. It does the Ninja Turtles so dirty and proves that anything Michael Bay or anyone else associated with him touches turns to loud garbage. I don't know, man. A lot of people really like those Transformers movies. I bet if I went and looked at the scores for the Transformers movies, most of them are probably over like 60%, or at least certified. Not maybe not certified, but at least fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Um, I don't think they did the turtles dirty in this movie. Actually, I think they did. Unless you're strictly talking about the design. If you're talking about the design, fine. But again, that comes down to preference. Um, but I think if you're actually looking at the personality of the turtles and the storyline with them, I think they did just fine. Let's see. 3.5 from Keith N. 3.5 out of 5. This film definitely has issues, but I don't care. I loved this film, and it desires more love than hate. It deserves more love than hate, I think is the verbiage there. Yeah, and that's great. I mean, you can. I think that's the thing. People people all want to be critics in modern day. They all want to be movie critics in this regard. And I mean, it's anything that has to do with art, right? Like everyone, when it comes to art, everyone's a critic, right? And that's fair. But if you go into it looking for negatives, if you go into any movie looking for negatives, you are going to find negatives. I could do that. I honestly, low key, I was thinking about doing a series like negative. I have to find the male version of Nancy, but like a negative Nancy character for the channel and have it be looking at really good movies like Oscar movies and just being like finding all of the like nitpicky bad things like that was kind of the idea. um so even looking at like Lord of the Rings, if you go with it through a fine tooth enough comb, you can find issues in stuff like Lord of the Rings or Jaws or any of these classics, any of these movies that are pretty universally loved. If you go through it with a fine enough comb, you can find bad stuff. Um, Again, I don't know if I'm actually going to do that with the channel, even though I think it'd be really funny. But we'll see. We'll see. It's again just because there's so much negativity on the internet. I it, it just sounds fun, maybe even to do like a 1 off or 2 off episode. We'll see. We'll see if I have time now that I have a job and everything. All right, let's do 1 or 2 more here. 1.5. Megan Fox totally ruined this movie. What idiot cast her for April's role? She can't act, and she just has that natural talent to sound unintelligent. Megan Fox would have, if not Megan Fox, it would have been 2.5 stars. This was a 1.5 star review. Again, I was pleasantly surprised by Megan Fox in this movie. I went into this movie totally prepared for Megan Fox to either be over sexualized or just be crap across the board. And again, don't get me wrong, they make her look crazy in a couple spots where she's basically doing the big diagram of like the conspiracy thing that's all like linked together. She's got that scene with Whoopi Goldberg where she's trying to like explain to her that these are like the turtles she grew up with, and like they make her look crazy. So that stuff didn't do very well for her character, but that's not really her choice. That was a writing choice. And again, I think it was just the quickest way for them to advance the plot. But I think she did just fine as April O'Neil. Which is again, that was one of the surprising things about this movie. I went into this movie fully expecting her to be awful, and I think she did fine. Again, nothing Oscar worthy, nothing crazy like that. But I went in expecting her to be just a complete ditz, and she pulled it off competently. I think she did a good job. All right, let's do one more. You know, that was a that was a okay movie. I almost had a good time watching her. Some jokes were nice. The most disappointing part was Megan Fox's acting. The robotic the robotic sledder and the bad design of the turtles' faces. The robotic shredder. Yeah, again, I sorry about that. I won't show the name, so I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But um, the robotic shredder was a lot. But again, looking at this from the angle of it is a Nickelodeon produced movie for between 8 and 13-year-olds. Again, 34-year-old me is like, I'm not a big fan of that design. 8-year-old me would have been totally fine with it. Uh, I think that's all I got because otherwise I could keep going all day with this. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this format of having the video while me still speaking, because I still want this to be podcastable, so you don't have to read everything. I'm still going to talk it out. But for those who like watching it, um, let me know what you think. If you like this format, or if you just want me to go back to having the black screen with the logo, we can do that too. Just wanted to try out something different. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. And if you like what's going on here, please drop a subscribe and drop a like. And I hope I see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.